It says in the Old Testament that God hardened the heart of the Pharaoh in order to bring upon the final test of killing the firstborn of the Egyptians. What does it mean for God to harden the heart of the Pharaoh? This interesting question came to me from a friend down under in Australia who has written to me before on Old Testament matters. The Old Testament is very difficult for us to understand through our modern eyes and sympathies. God hardens the heart of people through the law of karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect, which is necessary for the functioning of the universe. God doesn't harden the hearts in the anthropomorphic sense of the term. The Israelites needed to go through tests and trials to test their faith in Moses, who was God's representative, the guru in other words. And so they needed to undergo these different things. Being in bondage means to be in bondage to materialism, to ego, delusion, and so forth. The symbolism of the freedom of the Jews from the Pharaoh and the Egyptians is a metaphor for the soul's bondage that happens when it embraces the world for its self-definition and for seeking its happiness in all things. The Pharaoh really represents in this case the law of karma. In India, Yama is the Lord of Dharma and the Lord of Karma. And it's through the working of the rules, you might say the laws of the universe, that we eventually find our way to transcend those laws. So, for example, suffering and pain are there to teach us to look for the solution to suffering and pain. Now, that's a bigger topic than I'm prepared to go into right now, but in interpreting how it could be that God would harden the heart of anyone, the God of love, is, I admit, it's a good question. It's a puzzling one. Now, it brings me to the question of tests, however, and to the wonderful book I often reflect upon, the book of Job. Satan asked God for permission to test the devotee Job to see if when Job was deprived of his material success and family and health, whether or not he would still love God and have faith in God. Well, as you know, that Job did pass the tests. But the question comes up, are our tests, is everything that happens to us the result of something bad we did? Is it always the law of karma? Or, as many devotees and saints have said down through the ages, is it God's love, testing our love, testing our faith? Well, I'm going to venture in past the boundary lines of strict teachings and say that it's a both and. I don't think Job could have been tested without some karma on his part. It's a difficult thing. It's better for a devotee to see our tests, not from so much as karma, because then you start thinking of all the bad things you might have done, and you're never going to be able to answer that, usually. It's better to see tests and trials as a reflective of God's love, helping you to have greater faith in the goodness of all life, including the things that don't come as attractively wrapped. This is the meaning of seeing karma as God's love. And it is, because it's through the law of karma that without suffering and pain, we would never seek the love of God. We'd be perfectly happy with the way things are here and now. So the law of karma is a reflection of God's love, but it isn't the highest. The highest is the experience of God's love. As Curé of Ars, a mystical saint in France, once said, if you only knew how much God loved you, you would die for joy. But most devotees are not quite there yet. And since we all have karma, devotee or not, it's better if you are a devotee to see it as God's love, maybe not as attractively wrapped, but a test of your faith and so forth, in the goodness of God to draw you ever closer to himself. If we don't know the love of God, we can pray for devotion. We can pray to even have a taste of that love for which we would die for joy for. Now, there was one other thing in my response. The firstborn. What does it mean that the Pharaoh, that God inflicted the punishment of killing the firstborn, except for the Israelites? That's where they put the blood of the lamb on their doorposts, door jambs, in order to be spared that plague of killing the firstborn. The firstborn comes right out of the Mahabharata of India, in which the firstborn of the Dhritarashtra, the blind king, which is the ego self in a sense, is King Material Desire. Desire, the power of desire, is the firstborn of egoism, essentially. So the killing of the firstborn means the killing of that ego impulse towards material desire. It's a very interesting analogy with the Mahabharata, and in answer to the question, so far as I know, Yogananda didn't actually say some of these things, but to me it's so transparently obvious from his teachings in general that I felt to share these with this person. So I hope you find that helpful too.